All right, we're going to be going over the AP free response questions from 2014. Question number 3, which deals with this seating chart class and student class. Basically, a seating chart in this instance just creates a column, creates a seating chart, obviously, that is a two-dimensional array based on a list of students, and it orients them like it fills column 0 first, or the first column, and then so on. And we're asked to implement that method and then one other method where we can remove students whose absences have gone above a particular threshold. So we need to create, well, I'm going to create the class so you can actually see it. Now, I've already created the student object so that, as described in the question, so that we can actually create this without there being any errors thrown. So we're going to create a new class for the seating chart object, seating chart. And now we're told that a seating chart has one instance variable, a two-dimensional array of students called seats. And then in the first part of the question, we're asked to create the constructor, public seating chart. And the constructor, we're told, takes a list of students called student list. It then also takes two integers called rows and int calls, and we're told that it will never be the case that these will throw out of bounds errors. There will always be enough seats for all of the students in the list. That's in the preconditions. And so we're asked to create a constructor that correctly builds basically a grid work or a seating chart of student objects. So first off, we have to initialize our two-dimensional array from the fields because it doesn't exist until we create a new one. So we're going to say seats equals new student array of size rows calls, the dimensions that were sent over. And then because we have a list, we need to do something like a loop we need to iterate over the list of student names, but we need to keep track of what row and column we are currently filling. So we're going to create a new int called int row because the parameter or the parameter was rows, so we can still use row equals 0, or we could use like current row or something, but I'm just going to use row and call. And we're going to start at the top left as we're instructed to do. And then we need to iterate over the entire list of student objects that we were sent and place them appropriately in the rows and columns. So we know we need to create some sort of loop, and you could use a couple different kinds of loops, but I'm going to use an enhanced for loop. So for student object, and we're going to give it a temporary name of S. We're just going to put them all in there one by one. Student list. So again, this says, okay, go over the student list, grab each student one at a time, and place them in this object called S. And so at that point, we need to simply set the seats. We need to add that student to a particular seat. So seats at row column, because we're starting at 0, 0, equals S. But then how do we get down to the next appropriate seat? Well, we're not asked to fill based on columns, which would, take us across like maybe the front of the room across from the left to the right. We're asked to increment the row, not the column initially, so we need to increment row. And then we need to check, have we gotten to the bottom row yet? So we're going to say if row equals rows, meaning that because rows is one above, remember how the actual number of rows, the number that we count, is one above the index of that row. So if we say once row equals one above the last index, that means we've gone out of bounds, so we need to reset the values. We need to say row equals 0, so we go back up to the top, and then we say column plus plus, so we go to the next column. And that's it for the constructor for this question. Now the second part, and I'm just going to keep going right now, is to create a method. So this is question 3b at this point. This is, we're asked to create a method whereby a person utilizing the seating chart could automatically remove all students from the class who are above a given threshold of absences. So presumably each student object will be, keeping track of its absences, and it will know its name. And since those are placed in our seats array, two-dimensional array, we can scan over that two-dimensional array looking for students whose absences have gone above a certain threshold as specified by the method call. And this method is called remove absent students. And it will be sent over an allowed absences. So this allows for a little bit of flexibility in our simulation. We can say, I want to remove everybody who have 4 or more absences, or remove everybody who has 7 or more absences from the class. They're automatically dropped. That's the idea of this method. So it's important to get clear on what the method is trying to accomplish. And because it has a return statement, we want to start by creating that. So int, we're going to say like num removed. So the method should return the number of students removed. Let me just make sure I'm getting all this right. It should remove the number of students removed. Okay. No student seats. Okay. Yep. Everything's good. So num removed we're going to set to 0. And then we need to loop over a two-dimensional array. So this question is essentially like a nested loop question for int row equals 0. So we're going to go over the rows first. Row is less than seats dot length. That gives us the number of rows, row plus plus. So that's just a basic loop to go over all the rows. For int call equals 0, so we start at the first column. Call is less than seats at row dot length. That gives us the number of columns, call plus plus. And then all we need to say is, like, if the number of absences of any particular student has gone above a threshold, we need to increment the number of students that we're removing, and we need to set that seat to null. So we just erase them with null. All right, so we say if seats at row column does not equal null already, so we need to make sure that it doesn't already equal enough. Like we need to make sure that there's somebody sitting there. So that's what that check does. So if there's somebody sitting there and that person's absences have gone above the threshold, so seats row call dot get absence count is greater than or equal to allowed absences, and I believe it's equal to, can't remember actually, so it's either equal to, it's greater than or equal to, I believe. If it's greater than or equal to the allowed number of absences, then we need to increment the num removed, so we're keeping track of how many we removed. So, and we need to set that seat position at row column to null. We need to just totally erase them from our class. And then at the end, of course, we need to return the number of students removed. And that is it for question number 3.